You're tired, not just physically, but deep down, in your bones, from holding on to something long after everyone else has forgotten it, long after it stopped serving any purpose except to weigh you down. There's an ancient story from a time when wise teachers walked dusty roads that speaks directly to this exact exhaustion, this invisible burden you feel. It's about two monks, a muddy river, and a young woman who needed help across. One carried her for a moment, the other for days. Before we go any further, I want you to know you are absolutely not alone in this. We all carry these invisible burdens that drain our energy, sometimes without even realizing it. What's one small thing you've been carrying, holding on to, that feels too heavy right now? Just a word or two, if you feel comfortable sharing it, in the comments below. Sometimes just naming it can make it feel a little lighter. The story begins in a time long ago, in Japan, where two Zen monks named Tanzen and Ekido were traveling together. They were quiet men, devoted to their path, living by strict rules that guided every aspect of their lives. For them, the world was a classroom, and every step was a lesson. Their days were spent in study, meditation, and walking from village to village, spreading wisdom and seeking understanding. They followed the precepts, the guidelines for their monastic life, with deep commitment. Among these precepts was a particular emphasis on avoiding contact with women, especially young women, to maintain their spiritual focus and detachment from worldly desires. This was not about judgment, but about maintaining their vows and inner discipline. One day, as they were making their way along a particularly challenging road, a heavy rainstorm had turned the path into a slippery, muddy mess. They came to a deep, overflowing river, its banks slick and treacherous. The current was strong, and the water swirled with thick, brown mud. Crossing it would be difficult for anyone. On the bank, waiting hesitantly, was a young woman. She was dressed in a beautiful silk kimono, carefully folded to avoid the worst of the mud. Her face was etched with worry, her delicate sandals utterly unsuited for the crossing. The river was too wide, too swift, and too deep for her to manage alone, without ruining her precious clothes, or worse, losing her footing in the dangerous current. She looked helpless, caught between the desire to reach the other side and the fear of the crossing itself. Without a moment's hesitation, the older monk Kanzen approached her. His robes were simple, his manner direct. He saw her predicament, and without asking, without a word, he simply stooped down. He extended his arms, and with a swift, powerful movement, he lifted her into his arms. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, carefully, gently. Then, with the young woman cradled securely, Tanzen stepped into the turbulent water. He carried her across the roaring river, his bare feet sinking into the mud at the bottom, his strength steady against the current. He moved with purpose, eyes fixed on the opposite bank, completely focused on the task at hand. The water swirled around his legs, the mud clung to his robes, but he walked on, unconcerned. Once they reached the other side, he carefully set her down on the dry ground, just as gently as he had picked her up. The young woman bowed deeply, her face filled with gratitude, her silk kimono still pristine. Tanzen simply nodded in return. Not a single word was exchanged between them. The interaction was complete. Then, the two monks continued on their journey, walking away from the river, leaving the young woman to go her own way. The river was behind them. The incident, it seemed, was over. For the next several hours, the two monks walked in silence. The sun climbed higher, the road became drier, and the scent of pine filled the air. Tanzen walked with his usual steady pace, his mind seemingly unburdened, focused on the path ahead.
Aikido, however, was growing increasingly agitated. His steps became less sure, his brow furrowed deeper with every passing mile. The image of Tanzan carrying the woman seemed to be replaying in his mind over and over again, like a nagging thought he couldn't shake. The silence grew heavy, filled not with peace, but with Aikido's unspoken questions and mounting disapproval. Finally, as evening approached and they were preparing to stop for the night, Ikido could hold it in no longer. His voice was strained, a mixture of bewilderment and indignation. "Tanzan," he burst out, "we monks are not supposed to go near females, and certainly we are never to touch them, especially not a young, beautiful one like that. How could you just pick her up and carry her like you did?" His words tumbled out, fueled by hours of suppressed frustration, judgment, and confusion. He truly couldn't understand. Tanzan looked at him, his gaze clear and calm. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just a quiet understanding. He paused for a moment, as if genuinely considering Ikido's outburst, as if the question itself was an interesting observation. Then he replied with a soft, steady voice. "I left the woman by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" That's the story, and it's a punch to the gut, isn't it? The simplicity of Tanzan's reply cuts through all the layers of Ikido's internal struggle. The first turn of meaning here is the stark, immediate contrast between a physical action and a mental obsession. Tanzan performed a necessary act of kindness, an action rooted in the immediate present. He saw a problem, he solved it, and then he moved on. The moment was fleeting. His hands might have held her, but his mind did not linger. Ikido, on the other hand, never physically touched the woman, never broke his vow in the literal sense. Yet he carried her for hours, not in his arms, but in his mind. He carried her image, the judgment, the perceived transgression, the frustration, the conflict with his own beliefs. The physical act was over in minutes, but the mental carrying persisted, growing heavier with each passing step, poisoning his peace. Now, let's think about this in your own life. What are your women by the river? What are those events, those interactions, those words that you've picked up and carried far beyond the moment they occurred? It might be a snide comment someone made at work last Tuesday that still buzzes in your head. It could be a mistake you made last year that you rehash and regret every time your mind wanders. Perhaps it's an unmet expectation from a loved one, a perceived slight, or an argument that ended hours or days ago, but you're still mentally drafting your perfect rebuttal. These aren't just thoughts, they are burdens, they are weights. Every time you replay that argument, every time you fuel that resentment, every time you hold on to that judgment, you're picking up the woman by the river again. You're giving that past event, that fleeting interaction, an active, heavy presence in your present moment. You're choosing to carry it forward long after it has ceased to exist outside your own head. Consider the cost. Ikido walked for hours, silent, fuming, missing the beauty of the road, the peace of his journey, because his mind was fully occupied with something that was already over. What are you missing when you are so busy carrying these invisible weights? Are you missing the laughter of your children, the beauty of a sunset, the simple taste of your meal, the calm of your evening, the energy you need for creative work, for meaningful connection, for simply existing with ease? This constant carrying isn't just mentally exhausting, it saps your life force. It creates a low hum of anxiety or resentment in the background of your days. It prevents you from fully engaging with what is happening now, because a part of your awareness is always tethered to something that was. It's like trying to run a race with a backpack full of rocks. You can do it, but at what expense? And for what purpose? The true power of this story, the deepest turn of meaning, lies in the choice. Tanzan's question wasn't a rebuke, it was a revelation of a fundamental truth. You have a choice about what you continue to carry. Ikido was still carrying the woman because he chose to. He chose to nurture the judgment, the perceived offense, the internal conflict. He chose to let it live and grow within him.
It's not about denying that something happened, or pretending you weren't hurt, or that a situation wasn't unfair. It's about recognizing when the event itself is truly over. The physical carrying, the immediate problem, was resolved. Tanzan saw no need to keep engaging with it once it was done. He understood that once you've done what needs to be done, once you've learned what needs to be learned, you are free to let it go. This isn't always easy. Our minds are tricky, and they love to cling, especially to things that stir up strong emotions. But the lesson here is about developing the awareness to recognize when you are picking up something that no longer belongs to your present moment. It's about asking yourself, is this serving me? Is this helping me move forward? Or am I just adding unnecessary weight to my journey? Perhaps today, as you go through your day, you might find yourself reliving a difficult conversation or stewing over a minor irritation. In that moment, remember Tanzan's words. Ask yourself, have I left this by the river already, or am I still carrying it? Or am I still carrying it? Sometimes it's not a single dramatic weight, but 1,000 tiny pebbles. An old slight, a regret, a silent worry about a future that hasn't arrived. Each one, by itself, feels insignificant, but accumulated, they fill your pockets, unnoticed, until your step grows heavy, your shoulders ache. You might not even recognize the individual burdens, just the persistent hum of weariness, the quiet drain on your spirit. These aren't just thoughts, they are energies that demand your present attention, consuming your mental space, your emotional reserves. They don't block your path with a solid wall, but with a tangled undergrowth that makes every step harder. Imagine trying to see the stars, but your vision is blurred by tiny specks you keep trying to focus on. Letting go isn't about forgetting or denying what happened. It's about a conscious choice. Where does my energy go right now? What truly deserves to accompany me? It's an act of profound self-compassion to lighten your own load, to reclaim your own precious presence, and make space for what actually matters. The real weight isn't in what happened, but in how long you keep reliving it. What one burden, after hearing this story, might you finally consider setting down by the river today?